Jewish tradition constantly compels children and people to ask questions. And they say that the question is more important than the answer. But in Orthodoxy, they say that everything is in the book. And in spite of this, there are tons of Jewish scientists.
So it is true that education in general, I mean, when you say that the Jewish people are the people of the book, that was really meant the Bible. But you meant it more in books in general. Education was always emphasized in Judaism. And partly it was a means of survival. Because the Jews, they were not allowed to do many things, many professions and so on. So they were never particularly physically strong or otherwise. And as a means of survival, they had to be smarter than others. And so they emphasized education. It was always the case also in Judaism that the rabbi, which was supposed to be the most learned person in the community, was the most important person. So again, education was emphasized. So in that respect, yes, it is certainly the case that if you look at in science, in literature, and so on, then the number of people this is not religious people. I mean, I'm talking about people who come from a Jewish background. Their numbers far exceed the relative number of Jews in the general population. There is no question about it. You look at Nobel Prizes, things like this. There are usually more Jews than the relative numbers in the population. So I think that's part of this tradition. I mean, that is actually true for all religions and not just Judaism. That in the Middle Ages, for example, the church dominated, the thinking, and the church actually really built walls around certain types of knowledge, and basically said, we already know all that needs to be known, and you don't need to be curious about anything more. And that actually was part of the reason that the Middle Ages lasted as long as it did. They did. The main transition from Middle Ages to Renaissance and eventually to Enlightenment was in the fact that people no longer thought that they know everything that needs to be known, but rather realized that actually they don't know almost anything and they need to learn all that. Now, in the Jewish religion, just as much as in other religions, certain types of curiosities were not encouraged. At the same time, traditions in the Talmud and all that actually had to do with lots of curiosity. You had to, people, could quarrel about interpretations of this and that, for a long time. So yes, today you find scientists from all religions, some of them Orthodox, Jews or Christians or Muslims a little bit less, but yes, but certainly Jews and Christians. I have personal friends who are very Orthodox Jews and are extremely good scientists. Now, the people who become very good scientists, this does not mean all Orthodox Christians or Jews, but those who become very good scientists in spite, in a way, of them being very religious, usually adopt a very interesting approach to science and religion, which is, like they would say, for example, that everything that we see around us, the universe, is governed by the laws of physics. Yes, that's what governs everything. But who determined what those laws of physics are? That leaves a room for some deity, that did this. Now, of course, there are people who go to completely other extremes and they don't become scientists, they just say, oh, well, no, it's all like it's written in the Bible and so on. But, Galileo fought that battle already 400 years ago and won. So.
But you wrote a book which is called "Is God a Mathematician?"
Yeah, but yeah, I wrote a book called "Is God a Mathematician?" But that book is not about God. That book it's actually a phrase that was coined by a scientist, James Jeans, in the last century. And what that question means is, how come mathematics is as powerful as it is in terms of explaining the whole universe? That's what that question means. It's not about God.
You study neuroscientist?
No.
No,
I'm an astrophysicist.
Yes, but you said a while ago.
No, I'm an astrophysicist. But
how do you go from supernova?
I was always an astrophysicist.
To...
Yes, but I was always an extremely curious person. Always very, very curious. For example, I have thousands of books on art, and so on. I work with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra on music and so on. I was always very curious. And about 5 years ago or so, I became extremely curious about curiosity itself. So I devoted the last, 4 years or so to try to read all the important research on curiosity on the psychology side, on neuroscience side. I interviewed many, many researchers in the field, visited labs and so on. And that's what at the end ended with this book about curiosity.
How has the war changed you?
Well, you see, once you realize how bad war is and how, not that I ever thought that it was good, but when you see people die, unnecessarily, and people who had dreams and people who had ambitions and people who had this, and so on, it gives you a different perspective on priorities and what's important in life, and so on. I had students who studied with me who died. I've seen many other people die, and I knew exactly what these people wanted to do, and so, and then, they died in their 20s or their 30s and so on. So you get a different type of feeling for the importance of life, the importance of avoiding war at all costs, and really trying to find, by being curious about each other, finding a way to live a more peaceful way, in this world. Because at the end of the day, we're all in it, and let's make it better for all of humanity.
Are you optimistic?
I cannot say that recent years have made me extremely optimistic, but we heard a talk today that says that on many statistics, we are better today than we were, let's say, 100, 200 years ago or 500 years ago. So those things have improved in a certain way, but also some things are really not so good. Yes, you can no longer take an airplane flight, and without passing through all kinds of security and things like that. And there are many places where they need to check your bags and things like this. So, we can live with that, but I wish we didn't have to do any of that.